they have very strict rules on what you can do and what you can't do. And we don't have hardly any rules. We do whatever we want. I like that part a lot. Because when the French have a huge heat wave that comes in, they don't have any irrigation. And they got grapes out there, shriveling up. That's part of the reason that the year is so important. Some years are great, some years aren't so great. If it was a lack of water or too much water, I can fix that with a drip system. So I can turn on however much I want and then stop it whenever I want. And there's a lot of people that are very educated that will argue with me to the teeth about that. Masters sommeliers. That's not the French method. That's not the right method. Well, I kind of think the French got a little bit spoiled because for 500 years, they were the ones growing the grapes, making the wine, and then judging the wine. I think that was a good move for them. And so, in the New World, people are picking what grapes they think will work, and maybe some blends that is not been a normal blend, but people like it. And actually, if they're buying your wine, that's the judge. That's the judge right there. They come back. And that's about consistency. That's another thing. Consistency. It's very important to be consistent with your grapes. This thing about making wine and that sort of thing, there's some great winemakers in the Northwest. There's some great winemakers in California. I've heard them argue with each other, and they'll tell you that they only have the argument was, do they have 15% effect on the grapes, or do they have 30% effect? And most of them think it's less. It's about the grapes coming out of the field. And so, back to that original question, why are there so many more wineries here now? Well, there's been a lot of vineyards put in, and people have had 20 and 30 years of experimenting with the places where they're growing grapes, and figuring out what's going to be the right grape to grow in that area. And we've still got a long ways to go. Everybody's trying to figure that out. And sometimes you learn it by making a mistake. At 20 grand an acre, that's the old numbers. The new numbers are probably about 40 grand an acre now to put in. Those are expensive mistakes. So I'm going to kind of switch over back to the rainfall. 38 inches in Underwood, 35 inches or 32 to 35 inches in Hood River. As you come east, it's an inch a mile less, and that holds true. And since most of you folks are from the Dalles, I think that you probably already know that. But at my vineyard in the Mill Creek Valley, we get 17 inches of rain pretty much per year. 4 more miles over in the 3 Mile, where Harold Hickey's Hillside Vineyard is, that I've worked with since the beginning of it, it's 13 inches of rain. It just holds true. See, when you get to the east side of the Dalles, it kind of levels out at about 9 inches, and it stays that way between 9 and 7 inches from there till you get to about Walla Walla. Over that way, it stacks up against Blue Mountains, and there's a little more rain. So I got my timer up here. I think I'm about halfway. Yeah, this view right here is from Phelps Creek, and they're up on the flanks of the west side of the Hood River Valley. So they're 30 to 35. As you get to the east side of the Hood River Valley, they're probably more like 27 to 30, depending on where you are. This is right across the river from Mosier. What you're on the other side of the river is the new vineyard over there. I'm trying to remember, it was brothers that they were cherry farmers and owned that property. One was a pilot. He got killed in a airplane crash. His airplane crash. You remember who that was? Say it again? Yeah, the Wilson brothers. Wilson brothers, right. So that's the property is Wilson brothers. And what's kind of interesting about that, so they're down to 22 inches of rain. I think Lau is a little farther, this view is a little bit to the east of Mosier. But I think that those blocks you see up there are part of that cherry orchard for the Wilson brothers on the other side of the river there. That's Tom Garnier owns that now. And Tom Garnier, for some reason, liked grapes better than cherries. I guess he felt like he had. The thing about it is if you don't have a mortgage on your cherry orchard, I think you can make money on cherries. But when that rain comes, you lose the crop. I mean, I don't know. I always kind of wondered how much those guys were really making or not. You know, I've heard horror stories and I've seen times when it looked really good. I ordered some cherries to put on my place. 5 days later, I came to my senses and canceled it. I just couldn't afford the loss. I couldn't take a lost year or 2 or 3. And I think I managed vineyard for this fella. He already had about 15 acres of vineyard in, and he decided that he didn't want to take those losses. And I think he took losses for 2 or 3 years in a row. And there was a young planting that was on the river side of the freeway. If you drive from the Dalles to Hood River, you will now see a vineyard there on the right-hand side. There's some windbreak there. But that used to be a cherry planting. And he pulled out the young trees that they planted like 2 or 3 years previously and put grapes in. And let me tell you, I know a lot of cherry growers, and they couldn't believe it. Anybody would do that. I couldn't believe it myself, you know. Because we were making that much money on the grapes. It wasn't like, but it was steady. It was every year. You don't lose your crops. I don't think the price of grapes has been good enough to totally get into it and make it work until recently. Recently it's starting, the price keeps going up. Anyway, that's just a little side note. Those of you who know me know that I wander a bit when I get the pulpit, I guess. So I'm going to stop with the slideshow for just a bit. I made some notes here on early grape growers in the Columbia River Gorge between Underwood and Maryville. And that's what the Columbia Gorge Wine Growers Association, that's the members. So we get the very west edge of the Columbia Valley AVA, and we get all the Columbia Gorge. So since this is a historical society, I thought I'd give you a little bit of history as I know it. Now there's some real pioneers, and I'm going to try and talk about them right at the end. But, and somebody may know more about this than I did, because I came here in 1981. I was, 1978, I was one of the guys planting 2,000 acres of grapes down, at what's now known as Columbia Crest Vineyard. If you haven't heard of Columbia Crest Vineyard, it's in Patterson, Washington. If you haven't heard of it, I bet you've had some 14 hands wine every now and then. That's where it comes from. 14 hands, hot to trot. They actually have a winery in Prosser. They do 2 million cases a year of 14 hands. And that's just it's a St. Michel. St. Michel owns that label. They own that company. But that's just one of them that St. Michel owns. They got about 20 or 25 different labels, companies. And Erath is one of them. So I was selling grapes to Erath, and I got a 1-ton dually with, I haul about 5.5 tons of, anybody from DOT here? Let's say 5.5 tons of grapes over by Newburgh, Dundee, and I was having so much trouble getting through Portland. They were having to keep people at the winery later, so they asked me to take them up to where they make 14 Hands wine up in Prosser. So I drove up there and took my load up there about 2 hours. Had bins with grapes in them. I got there, and there were about 8 semis lined up, waiting to get weighed and unloaded. And on the semis were 3 stainless steel tubs, they call them gondolas, and they're hinged to the side of the trailer. And they pull up, and there's about an 8 or 10 ton hook that comes down and picks up the handle going across the top. It kind of looks like a toolbox. And when it picks it up, since it's hinged on one side, it dumps it into a hopper, and then there's a screw that pushes it out. They can unload a semi in about 20 minutes, maybe a half hour. And they do that. They do it 2 times or 3 times, depending on how big the tubs were. And then they head right back out to go get another load. It's all machine-picked grapes. Well, I showed up with... about, I think it was 12 bins, or 11 bins, 11 half-ton bins of grapes. And first of all, they took the bins off, and some guy came out and said, "What's that?" I said, "Well, Simpson told me that I'm supposed to bring it over here." I said, "Okay, well, when we get done with the semis, we'll take care of you." But they took it off my deck, so I sat there for 3 hours just watching nothing but semis get unloaded. And when I would go to some place that unloaded grapes normally, like with bins, well, what they do is they take it with the forklift, they take it off, they set it someplace, another forklift picks it up, rotates, dumps the bin, and while the bin is turned over, they take a hose and hose off the bottom of it so there's nothing sticky on there or anything like that the next morning when you go to pick into it again. Well, I think I got there about 3 in the afternoon, and about 7 or so, they decided that they could unload me. They were all done with the semis. And then when they unloaded me, they were ticked at me because now they gotta pick each one of these things up 12 times, you know? And they wouldn't wash the bins off. That was their way of getting back at me for showing up with bins at their place. And I told the guy, I said, hey, just show me where the hose is. I'll wash it off myself, no problem. I'm trying to figure out how we're gonna wash the bins the next day when we're picking back into those bins out in the field, and we don't have a source for that. And that turned into quite the deal. He notified me that they didn't wash out those tanks on those trucks, so why should they wash out the bins? They're just wasting water.
Did you ever go back?
Well, yeah, I had to take my load back the next day. You know, I had no choice. They told me where to go. They're paying me for the fruit, yeah. But I did call the guys in charge and ask them if they could maybe talk to that assistant foreman down there and tell them to wash my bins off before they put it back on. And they did, so. Yeah, but that's an awakening when you see that. That's a deal. So some of the people that I know of who were very early into grapes around here, who had some of the pioneers basically around here. On the west side, I got Chuck Henderson from Mondelez Winery. A lot of people called it the Bingen Winery. It was in the big building down there. That was the first. That was the first winery. Matter of fact, their bonded wine number is number 5. That put them as the number 5 winery in Washington. And I'm going to jump down just a little bit back to the east side. But when Chuck Henderson started that winery, he and Don Graves were partners. Not in the winery, but well, maybe they were in a winery, I'm not quite sure. But Don was growing big red grapes over in Dowsport. So he's one of the first ones that I knew of to have grapes in that here. By the way, I met a girl from Hood River, for those of you who don't know, and that's what brought me down here. After 3 years putting that vineyard in at Columbia Crest in Patterson, then I also got named as an area manager for 650 acres of grapes over there. But when I asked my wife to marry me, I told her that I didn't think she was going to make it in Patterson, moving from Hood River, but if she gave me a year, I promised I'd move back to the gorge. And we got there, and a week later, she just flipped the calendar over and took a magic marker and circled the day. and 30 days before that day, she had me come down and put the first and last for a rental in Odell. So when I got back over here, it was kind of like, wow, now I got to figure out how to make a living. That was about 1982. They just closed the cannery, the Diamond Fruit Cannery in Hood River. So that's what brought me down here, and then I decided I'd start a vineyard management company and start planting grapes. So let's go back to some of these pioneers. So Chuck had a vineyard up on top of, up Snowden Road, up above White Salmon. Don Graves was growing Cabernet Sauvignon. That's a big step. When everybody first started doing grapes in the Northwest, they didn't know for sure what they could grow, what they could get right. Well, Cabernet Sauvignon is just about the last thing you pick. So to have that right by the end of October or the first week of November, that's that's a real guess, if you're gonna get it or not. And, but Don drew some, very good, cab saw. So let's see, Rick Insminger, who was a Sligo Vineyard manager on Underwood. Between Rick and Chuck Henderson, they mostly were growing cool weather varieties. When I say cool weather varieties, I'm talking Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir, you ever heard of Pinot Noir? Gewürztraminer, Riesling, Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc. Not saying anybody was growing Pinot Blanc down there, but that's a cool weather variety. People tried some Limburger. People have tried Tempranillo over there. I don't know how well that's worked. Hood River is a little warmer than Underwood is. So on some south-facing slopes, especially on the east side of the Hood River Valley, they could probably get away with some bigger red grapes. But the Dalles area and Mosier and Lyle coming this way, that's where the big red grapes are coming from, and then also out east, Horse Heavens. When I say big red grapes, I'm talking about Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Zinfandel, Syrah, Grenache. So back to some of the pioneers. In Cliff Blanchett, he started Hood River Vineyards, which was the first winery east of the Cascades in Oregon, including Walla Walla. Now, most people say, well, Walla Walla is in Washington. Well, it is. But the Walla Walla AVA is mostly in Oregon, where the grow the grapes is mostly in Oregon. The wineries are in Washington. And if the truth be known, I bet you there's more grapes from the Horse Heaven Hills at AVA going into Walla Walla wineries than there is Walla Walla grapes. It's just a bigger area, and there's a lot of wineries down there. And they do good wine. Not as good as ours. And Judge Cushman, he had a Riesling vineyard in Hood River, and his son, Rich Cushman, was in the business very early on, back in the 70s, mostly over in the Willamette Valley. And along about, sometime in the 2000s, I believe, he moved back to Hood River, and he started making wine for a lot of wineries in Hood River. Mount Hood, himself, which was Viento, down by the freeway on the west side of Hood River. So East Siders, Don Graves, John Bankson, out on Chenoweth, he was one of the early ones. Bernie Smith, he retired DA and judge. He planted Sauvignon Blanc, I believe it was 1968, 68 or 70. They never froze to the ground. They got trunks on them like that. And then the Gunkles down in Maryhill. So, of course, Maryhill Winery's down there. And I think probably a lot of you probably don't know that Maryhill Winery doesn't own that property down there. They don't farm those grapes that's around the winery. They lease that property. They're on, I think, 50-year lease now. And the Gunkles have planted all that. Speaking of which, I think we've got a couple slides here. Let's see if I can find another. That's Mosier again. These are the vineyards that are on the north side of the freeway. That's the freeway there. That's that block that I was telling you where they pulled cherry trees out, young cherry trees. That's the Pines Vineyard. That actually is one of our clusters. professional photographer come and take some pictures, and this was a killer picture. We bought his, all of his stuff, so we didn't have to give him credit. But it's Jim, he was in the Dows for a long time ago. Say it again?
Jim Wong.
Say the last name?
But it looks like Wham.
No, no. He had something to do with, I think he helped do media for the Sunshine Mill down there.
Jim Semler.
Yes, Jim Semler. That's who took that picture. Oh, and then there's a guy, oh, that's the next slide. Yeah. That's my older brother. That was this year's harvest. My daughter was out taking pictures. If you look at these, pictures, you're gonna see almost everything is on a slope, and there's a reason for that. The slopes don't frost as easily as flat ground, especially slopes up on the sides of the hills as opposed to down the valley bottom. They kind of make their own breeze going down, so it's harder for frost to set out. And the thing about grapes is, you can get frosted in the spring, just like cherries, and you get frosted in the fall if you're not far enough along and there's a frost that comes along in the middle of September. Take it from me, I can tell you that for sure. Let's see. There's one of our Mexican pickers. He's having way too much fun. Must be making. I'll tell you what, he is making money because when they pick Zinfandel, they all make money. Big clusters. They come off real fast, real easy, and whoops. I've had pickers that make $40, $45 an hour picking Zinfandel.
Nice.
And yeah, I'm happy to pay it. Do a good job.
Well, you were sneaking up on 2:30 here.
Okay. I better talk faster. Well, this is what I was thinking about. This is Gunkel's up there around Maryhill. Maryhill Winery up there. And that's the map. We've already talked about that. And here's the old Pines shot. This was given to me by Bud Sandoz. So I'm going to talk about older pioneers now, just real quick. I believe the Sandoz family probably planted the first wine grapes in this area. There were three brothers that came from French-speaking Switzerland, and the first thing they did was plant vineyard because they wanted wine. Well, one of the sons, Julius Sandoz, took the vineyards out around the turn of the century. And I think that Louis Comini, who planted the Zinfandel that's at my property, pretty sure that he probably checked up with those guys as far as how they were doing and what they had planted. And anyway, that's a whole other presentation about Louis Comini. So, well, I'm not going to get to the wineries, so that'll be another presentation too. Anybody have any quick questions?
Well, let's do some questions and let's get the drawing. Let's get the tickets from downstairs. Questions?
Hi.
Well, that's where I was trying to get to. Yes, Al?
So what's the waving tree? Is that Gunkel's or?
No, that's his neighbors. Just be, yeah, it's relatives of Takahashi, Gary Takahashi. I don't think the Gunkels considered doing a winery, but then ultimately the Gumpels are probably own half of Mary Hill and Takahashi own the other half, yeah.
And Lonnie, that picture came from a 1911 publication put out by the local sphere, what attract people to come to settle in the valley.
Right, this was given to me by Bud Sandoz, and Roger had it, and this was it, when he was used to do his feature, guess where this is, or guess what this is.
It's a history mystery,
Yeah, history mystery, that's right. And I had it, on the computer, I had it up as the next one, and I thought I had it showing you folks, so I'm talking about Louis Comini and that sort of thing, and you probably are wondering what the heck that was talking about.
Hey, Lonnie,
Yes,
these boutique vineyards with the vanity label, where are they, where is the wine produced? And,
I'm sorry, say it again, Jane?
okay, these vineyards are predominantly in Mill Creek and Skyline Road. These are boutique vineyards, modest acreage, for instance. Where's the wine produced, and what are their labels? So if we want to buy a local wine, what are we looking for? Or are they all under the pines?
I'm sorry?
Repeat the question for the people that.
Okay, so I believe the question was, if you want to buy wine made from some of the smaller vineyards in the Mill Creek Valley or in the 3 Mile Valley, what wineries are making that?
And we know to look for the pines.
Yeah.
Are there any?
Well, that's the one I was going to tell you.
Okay, then the conversation.
And by the way, just a word from a sponsor, we do have some rack cards downstairs that will give you direction to our tasting room in Hood River, and you can take that with you. Well, let's see, Cathedral Ridge, Mount Hood, I think East is, I'm not positive where everybody gets their stuff from each time, but like McDuffie Vineyards is Chardonnay, Syrah, and Cabernet Sauvignon. I make a standalone Cabernet for the Pines label, and it says McDuffie Cabernet on it. Chardonnay is sold to a number of different wineries. And I've also blended some of the McDuffie's Syrah with my Syrah. So,
Lonnie, the best glass of wine you ever had, what was it? Would be Old Bronx Inn from the Pines, maybe?
yeah. I tell you a quick story. Before I had a winery and a wine label, I made a deal with some guys that were winemakers over in Atlanta, and I took a ton of Old Vine Zin grapes over to them, and they turned, I think, a third of it into wine for me. I think it was 91, and so I go over and picked it up, and I had it in my pickup, and I came back, and Ross Bailey was doing a tasting, and it was $100 a bottle tasting. And there was, so everybody had to come up with, I don't know, I think we all had to pay about $35 to be able to afford, I think it was about $600 bottles, the people over there. And Tony Foote was there. So we tasted all those wines, and they were pretty good. You know, I mean, they were good. The thing about the difference between a $100 bottle of wine and a $50 bottle of wine, in my estimation, is just the marketing of it. If you can get it, if you get your hands on it. It's not necessarily the taste so much more. I just like consistent taste. I like wines to be consistent from year to year. But anyway, when we did the tasting, we got done, and I said, you know, I got some homemade wine out in the truck. You know, anybody want to try some Old Vine Zin? And they knew about the Old Vine Zin because I had tasted one before. I said, I just picked it up. Had a piece of tape across it that said Old Vine Zin, 91. I brought that thing up and Tony bought 3 cases of it. At $35 a bottle.
That's great.
I think it's time to do the drawing. So, will that do, what are we drawing for? What's the one you brought?
Well, the first one is, this Old Wine's In. It's 2021 Old Wine's In.
All right. Just one.
There it is.
All right.
Shall I read it? Okay, read this one too?
I don't think so.
The red ones.
No, this is, yes, the red ones. Thank you. It's a downstairs ticket.
Okay, 414-467.
That's digits for 467.
467, I'll tell him.
Okay.
467.
That's the one.
Yeah. So I bought 3 tastings to raffle off. And it's for, each tasting is for 4 people.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one.
See, it's sitting back there. All right. Tasting. You know you'll get good taste. Put it on.
Okay, 475-303. 475-303.
I told you.
Nobody wants to taste it. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So normally we charge $10 a tasting, so basically that's a $40 value.
Well, that's the winner. Whoever you gave that to.
I gave mine to see.
Downstairs?
Yeah, it's a downstairs ticket because it's yellow.
Okay. 414-466. Apparently it's downstairs. I got one more.
Okay, I'll take it.
Our winner's right here. Step right up.
Can't give that up. Mine away, I'll take it.
All right, here we go, 475-248.
Once again, 467, a yellow ticket. Anybody?
Oh, yeah, it is.
467? Sure. 467? All right. Lonnie, thank you. Let's give him a big hand. Okay, and again, take a right turn at the foot of the steps and have some birthday cake.